one of the first questions that maybe a CEO or a board member who is sitting around thinking, well, how did this happen, might want to know is, why didn't we track everything? And the simple fact is that that's not just a technology question, that's an HR question. It goes to employee morale and retention. So there's a balance in any company or organization between how much that you monitor what employees are doing versus, how safe people feel in their environment to work.
That's Andy Reisman, and if you spend any time in the civil space needing forensic computer services, sooner or later you're going to meet Andy or hear about him. Hey there folks, if we have not yet had a chance to meet, my name is Chad Roberts with eDiscovery Co-Counsel. We're a law firm that helps plaintiffs' lawyers with electronic discovery and complex litigation, and it's all we do. In today's Evidence Solutions series, had a great opportunity to sit with Andy in his shop in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and talk about the part of his practice that involves inside data theft and civil litigation that results from that. Here's our visit with Andy.
Hello, I'm Andy Reisman. I'm the CEO of Elijah. We are a digital forensics and electronic discovery company that's been in business since 2003, and happy to talk to you.
Oh boy. Andy, thanks very much for our visit today. Andy, before we jump into today's topic about digital theft, can you just tell us a little bit about Elijah and your background and how it all came to be?
Yeah, absolutely, Chad. So I started Elijah back in 2003. We started off as an eDiscovery company back in the day before there was eDiscovery hosting. Yeah. And one day, one of our early clients gave to us a couple of CDs, said, can't figure out what's on here, let us know what it is. I took a look, it was NCASE evidence files. Had no idea what they were, but we were problem solvers, so figured out that I needed to go out to Pasadena, California, get trained in NCASE, learned about it, solved the client's problem, and figured out after sitting in a room with about 15 other child porn investigators that there might be a room for work on the civil side, and sort of took off from there.
So in as background, NCASE, as I understand it, is primarily a law enforcement tool, traditionally a law enforcement tool that is used to conduct forensic investigations of computers.
Yeah, so certainly that was how it started. Over the years, NCASE, along with quite a few other digital forensic software products, have gained use and acceptance in civil litigation as well. We do some criminal litigation work on the defense side, but the vast majority of the work that we do relates to plaintiff and defendant civil litigation matters and investigative matters.
I got us off track. You got us going on how Elijah got going, but then, come on, you wound up in Chicago, and how many employees do we have now?
Yeah, so we're a small company by eDiscovery standards and a decent sized company by digital forensic standards. So it's about 15 of us, and we are based in Chicago. I personally am based in Florida and have been for the last 6 years. We started off based in Chicago, Illinois, came down here after suffering through an undue number of Chicago winters, but still get up there quite a bit. We also have a Michigan office in Grand Rapids and one in Detroit.
Wow. And what's the typical case profile? What's the typical, before we get into digital theft, what's your bread and butter kind of phone call of I need your services?
Yeah, so it runs the gamut. On the digital forensic data collection side of the fence, it could be anything litigation related or pre-litigation related, where a client has a problem, they need to have somebody collect and preserve electronically stored information. So we take care of that. Then from an investigative standpoint, I'd say half of our cases relate to employee data theft, whether on the side of the employee or the employer. Other digital forensic investigations, you name it, whether it's evidence spoliation, trying to authenticate information. In patent litigation, it could be trying to determine prior art, whether there's a dispute regarding the date of an invention, for example. It runs the gamut.
Prior art. Let me just, that came out of nowhere.
Sure.
What is that about, prior art?
Yeah, so I didn't mention in the beginning, I have a legal background. I practiced law and was a partner at a large law firm before I came over, and one of the areas that I had focused on was intellectual property. So apologies for throwing around terms, but
Yeah.
prior art in patent litigation broadly refers to whether there's an invention that predated the one that's in question. So looking at what was known before a patent was filed. And so you might be looking at, for example, in a digital forensic investigation, a Word document. And that Word document has certain file system metadata, and it also has certain embedded date metadata. And we're trying to validate either was the date in that document when the document reports it as being, or is it some different date? Because when something was invented or when other prior art existed, that will have a bearing on the patentability of a product.
Cool.
And now we're way out over the skis of what I currently do.
Okay, all right. So, you know, to segue just directly into today's topic, which is insider theft, I know as an outsider, as a layperson, lawyers hear about data breaches in the news all the time, and this notion of people in, you know, Chechestan hacking into Walmart's computers and getting our credit card numbers and things like that. But my understanding is, by volume, the more significant by volume problem is actually insider theft of data.
That's absolutely right. So the hacking of Walmart or Target or wherever is being targeted at the moment, that gets all the press attention because, you know, it's sexy and it's,
Right.
you know, they make movies about that sort of thing. You know, nobody wants to watch a movie about an employee taking data unless it's like Edward Snowden taking state secrets and the like. So insider data theft is often overlooked in the cybersecurity profile of an organization, or if it's attended to, it's sort of the neglected stepchild, if you will, of the organization's information security readiness. But what we've seen is that it's really not a question of whether an organization has suffered insider data theft, but you know, what percentage of employees who have left have taken data, and the percentage is incredibly high, and it often goes undetected.
Is there, for lack of a better term, sort of benign, you know, taking of things, like one lawyer leaves another law firm and goes to another law firm and says, I want to take my forms with me, things like that? Or is it a little more not so benign?
Yeah, so it's a mix, right? You mentioned lawyers. That's sort of a unique animal within the insider data theft area because in addition to the theft aspect, there's the question of whose data really is it that's being taken. So if you're taking client files, is the lawyer taking the firm's data or is the lawyer taking the client's data? And then there's questions of permission and the like. But the more traditional, and we do get some of those, but the more traditional type of cases would be, you know, say your logistics company or a company that is in the business of making a product or selling a service. Yeah. And you have, let's say, a salesperson who leaves the company and, you know, 3 weeks later, the organization realizes that its number 2 and number 4 customer is suddenly gone. And they're trying to figure out, you know, is this just a coincidence or is it because our top salesperson just left? And if so, did that person, you know, take pricing information or other information, you know, with them in order to take advantage of that and underbid us? so to gain a competitive advantage.
I'm with you. And so then, is it typically the case that there are employment agreements that also provide an overlay on all these scenarios?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that we often see come up is, did the employer have a use policy, a computer usage policy, and did that policy describe what the employee could and couldn't do on the computer systems? Was there an exit policy in place where the employer had a procedure for the employee to meet with an HR person, and were there questions asked about, did you have any external hard drives that you were using, or thumb drives? What did the person say in response to those things? So there's policy and procedure that definitely comes into play. It's quite often the case, unfortunately, that organizations have computer usage policies that are buried in 100-page employment manuals that nobody's read since somebody, who's a lawyer like you has written them.
Right.
And then, instead of a serious investigation into whether somebody is taking data, the former employee is thrown a party. You got a little piece of cake, you say goodbye, and along with whatever was in the desk drawer goes the company's information. One of the first questions that maybe a CEO or a board member who is sitting around thinking, well, how did this happen, might want to know is, why didn't we track everything? And the simple fact is that that's not just a technology question, that's an HR question. It goes to employee morale and retention. So there's a balance in any company or organization between how much that you monitor what employees are doing versus, how safe people feel in their environment to work. And of course, there's a cost associated with the monitoring software, but it's really those soft costs that tend to lead to organizations not fully monitoring every keystroke the way some people imagine that employees are being monitored. So if you're not in an organization that has the sort of big brother approach to watching what employees do, the question then is, well, what happens, what is being tracked that maybe isn't by design by the employer, but just as sort of a normal byproduct of computer usage? And that's really where we come in. And we can help with interpreting, server logs and the like that have been deliberately put into place. But it's far more common that what we see is, hey, we have this laptop that just got returned, or we've got this phone that just got returned that our employee or employees were using when they quit. We want to try to figure out what they were doing on there. And so the real challenge there is, Microsoft, and I'll use them, obviously people use Apple and other systems, but most common is Microsoft Windows. Microsoft designed their system for efficiency. They want the operating system to do things fast. And they did not design the system with the idea of we need to solve a digital forensics problem. Right. So it does not monitor every keystroke, log every file that's been copied. And so it's not just simply a matter of we power on the computer, take a look at a log, and there's your answer. But there are certain things that Microsoft has done for the sake of efficiency that we can use to put together a story of what happened when. So I'll give you an example. And apologies for the long rambling answer.
I like this. No, this is what we need.
Yeah. So let's take a what's called a LNK file or a link file. So when a user is opening up a Word document for the first time, the computer operating system in Windows will create a file that's called an LNK file. And the LNK file will store information about that Word document that's being opened. And that LNK file will store the name of the file being opened, it will store the location of the file being opened, the folder path, the drive letter associated with that program, if it is, or with that file rather. If it's being opened from an external hard drive or a flash drive, it will log the make and the model, assuming that's populated on that device, the serial number if it's populated on that device, and various other information.
And does the LNK file, is that separate and distinct to the degree to where if one of the files created as a Word file, for example, will that Word file not have all the metadata you're talking about that could be in the LNK file?
Correct. So the Word file will not, if all I did was have a docx file, for example, I couldn't take that docx file and look at the history of where it's been. But I could, if I can locate on the computer either an active or deleted LNK file. And they are temporary files, so they often don't hang around forever. Then I could piece together some of the story of where that file was, because within the link file, it tells you the first time that that Word file was opened on the computer from a particular location, and the last time that it was opened on the computer using the computer from a particular location. And Microsoft presumably did this to make it faster to find that file the next time somebody clicks on it. And so there was an efficiency reason, getting back to that original point, for the creation of these LNK files. But it's now also a forensic artifact that we as investigators can use to try to put together that story of, hey, the day before John's departure, John opened up a link file or opened up a Word file or a spreadsheet or what have you that was stored on a flash drive that had been plugged in for the first time, which we might find from another source, had been plugged in for the first time that day, and it was stored in a folder called Stuff I Want to Take With Me and Use for Bad Purposes.
Right. Yes.
And so there are various other artifacts like that, ranging from the operating system registry to what are called jump lists. And I won't go into all of these, but all sorts of different artifacts that we can put together to track that sort of file history. And we can do similar things with internet history and the like. So,
curiously, just now, could we just go theoretically to the individual employee that's left perspective, and they want to do everything squeaky clean and by the book, and there may be some gray areas about, I've been working on files at home or things like that. What if you were in that position and you had some idea, I'm going to be leaving this organization in 2 weeks, what would be the prudent thing to do? Yeah,
so I'm going to answer that question and another one first because it relates to something else you said earlier. So we do work with employees or companies who are hiring employees routinely. And it quite often is the case that an employee has legitimate reasons to plug in a flash drive or what have you, upload to the cloud or email to themselves personal information that they've been storing on their computer. They might have tax returns or family photos or what have you, and they want to put them on a flash drive and take them with and then delete them from the computer. And maybe somebody like me who's at another company does an investigation and red flags go off. Hey, this guy plugged in a flash drive and copied a bunch of data, and we need to go after them. So if it were me and I was the employee in that situation, I would approach HR, if there's an HR department, or my supervisor, and say, once I'm putting my 2 weeks notice, say, hey, I have personal information that I store on my phone or on my computer that I want to take with me and that I don't want to leave with the company. Can you tell me if there's somebody in IT who I can work with to get this data off of my computer so that everybody knows it's on the up and up.
All in the sunshine and documented.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now, if my goal was to do something more nefarious, I might not be doing that.
Right.
But if I genuinely am trying to leave
Yeah.
on good terms and without taking data, but do need to take documents with me, communication and cooperation are how that gets done and avoids problems.
So fair to say that just might not occur to everybody to do that. Even an innocent instance of downloading family pictures, it might not always. If you've been working with this computer for 3 years, day in and day out, it might not occur that suddenly it's become sensitive that way.
For sure. And then, there's what I will delicately refer to as a difference in perspectives that there can be, where you might have a salesperson who thinks these are my clients and I've generated these relationships and this spreadsheet that I've created that has all of the contact information and sales information, that's all mine and I did it, so I'm taking it. And that person might not think that what they're doing is wrong.
Right.
The company presumably has a very different perspective on that.
Right.
You were employed by us, you were on our dime, this was something we asked you to do during the course of your employment, that's our data, it's not yours. But all the time we hear that from folks.
Difference of opinion.
Yeah.
What do you want folks to know before they call you on the phone? What do you want them to know about what you all do, what services you can provide to them, and what they might ought to be doing when the thought occurs, I may need an Andy Reisman in my life right now?
Yeah, obviously we want people to know, soup to nuts, we do it all, ranging from digital forensic collection, consulting, investigation, to e-discovery, hosting, and processing, all that good stuff. Hire us for anything. We'll make baskets and we'll sell cars. But no, really what we want them to know in particular about insider data theft is, whatever your normal processes are for efficiency within your organization, such as, hey, let's give this computer to somebody else. Hey, let's have them work on it and see what was going on. Hey, let's wipe the drive and reissue it so that we save $80 on a hard drive. Right. Don't do that. It's super easy to pull a hard drive and stick in a new one and then get back to us, or to build us in as part of your organization's retention procedures, where when a key person is leaving, you give us a call, we take care of imaging the drive, you go about your daily life. We don't have to do an investigation then and there, but we could. But if not, that drive is preserved. 4 weeks later, you find out there's a problem, whether it's a data theft problem, and then we try to figure out what happened when, or maybe it's a completely different problem. Maybe there's a claim that gets made for employment discrimination. And one of the potential defenses, which is why, let's say you let the person go, is that they were failing to do their job. And so we might be needing to look at internet history to see that Netflix was in use all day long during the workday. So definitely preserve the information, build us in as much as you can to the process, and have reasonable expectations. We can't track every keystroke, but we can find out a lot of good stuff.
That's probably our hook right there at the end. Andy, thanks so much for visiting with us, and we'll probably do this again on other subjects if it's all right from time to time.
Sounds great.
Because there's a ton of other things we could have talked about as well.
Sounds good.
Thanks a bunch.